Hello again, this is your astrologer Hassan Jaffer explaining you the transits for Amy Winehouse. Now Saturn had just started coming up in a chart. Last several years it was at the very bottom and people have a very difficult time when planets are down, and it's absolutely amazing that millions are following. She had so many fans with the planets at the very bottom, and it was just about to start coming up. With every planet moving up, she had like another 20, 22 years ahead of her. And even the peak would have come in about 10 years' time. So she was just beginning right now. Now, Neptune was in her, first of all, the slowest moving planet is Pluto, which is once in 246-year events. It was in the 7th house for a number of years. 7th house of the marriage. Pluto indicates the areas that you completely redefine. It was also touching off Neptune for the last 3-4 years. That's time when you give up obsessions and intoxications. In her case, not just alcohol and drugs, but also her obsession with a partner in love matters. That was their theme. Pluto touched off Moon also last 1.5, 2 years, where you redefine your habits also. This is a very difficult aspect, but fantastic for self-mastery when you're trying to control your habits. And we're just about to go into the 8th house of life and death situations, etc. Now, Neptune was right on top of the chart, where you become like an idol for everyone. It also is an aspect of scandals, but fantastic for music and art and videos and acting and wherever you have to project fantasy on the screen. And Neptune was opposing Venus from the last 3-4 years, indicating an extremely sad aspect. It's one of the major signs of sorrow in astrology. In fact, she was not born with it. She was born with a positive aspect of both Venus and Mars trine to Neptune, where they both were being opposed by Neptune, by a transit in her career. So all her pain, all her sadness, all her intoxication, the addiction, which is Neptune-Mars, something which she was going through, alcohol, drugs, everything, including love, everything becoming an obsession and nightmare and scandals, all that theme, her drug reactions, all that part was fantastic for her career because all her songs were about that, actually. It was very sad, this aspect. Now, this was just finishing. Now, Uranus, in the meantime, was in the 11th house. This once in 84-year events. 11th house indicates all your hopes and wishes for the future, where there are sudden changes in this respect. Now, what happened was Pluto, in 2008, 9, 10, till about mid-2011, Pluto was squaring her sun sign as well as Mercury. Also, Uranus was touching it up once in 84 years. Pluto is an aspect which makes you completely redefine your thinking, where you feel that the entire establishment has to change to adapt to your viewpoint. People who are antisocial or dictators are born with it, like the Bush family. It's a common thing with them. Stalin was born with that. Mao Zedong was born with that. So she became a bit of a dictator, sarcastic and caustic and all that, but this is only temporary. But also must have had close calls for life and death, which made her reevaluate her whole attitude towards life and death and God at a conscious level. That's the Pluto-Mercury theme. Uranus touching it off indicates like a sudden brilliant aspect, but also where you come close to nervous breakdowns. And it's a very erratic aspect. And so the last 3-4 years she was going through that, both her Sun and Mercury, her goals in life. And now mind you, it's in the 5th house of creativity, of songwriting, of lyrics. So she wrote some beautiful, well, I'm not sure if they are beautiful songs, but they were written in a very raw, there's no subtlety about it at all. But they were from the heart and they reflect her feelings very well. But along with that antisocial aspect with Uranus, the brilliant aspect where total nervous exhaustion and sudden, almost like coming to nervous breakdowns, then Saturn touched off her Sun and Mercury, which is every 7 years this aspect happens. There's a 30-year cycle, 28, 29, 30-year cycle. And 2008 and 9, it was exactly about 2010, where she had a lot of difficulty in communication and getting through to people, and also the difficulty in assimilation of trace minerals. And it's just starting to move up in her chart where it starts getting some recognition. But 2010 till about March, April of 2011, Saturn squared that Moon. First of all, Saturn squared that Neptune for the last 2-3 years, indicating she was able to clamp her drug habits and all that to some extent, or intoxication aspect, but a lot of mental stress. But Saturn touching off Moon, this is one of the aspects of being anemic, low blood pressure, low metabolic rate, weak eyesight, and you tend to age under this transit, and all the wrinkles, etc., become even more prominent, and you become very pessimistic. And every 7 years, this aspect happens. And so low iron, lack of sleep, and depression. It creates almost like a pathological aspect of depression. She was not born with a negative aspect, which she was going through it by transit.